All right, boys. It's been a hiatus since the last fantasy podcast, but I'm glad I was able to get it knocked out today. I had a little bit of a good break at work, so I can finally get this knocked out for us real quick. We are coming towards the end of the regular season. We're about to be coming into playoffs, so I'm going to go ahead and do a Week 13 little bit of a recap, and then I'll go into Week 14 projections, and then we will do a couple other categories too before I get off of this. So overall, we had a pretty good week of fantasy once again. A couple close matchups, including Jace against Bryce, and then me against Carson, which that one was a nail biter. But I'm gonna go ahead and start off with Dylan versus Andy this week. So Dylan is 6-7. Andy is 7-6. Andy's been one of the hottest teams the last couple weeks, and he took the L this week. Dylan needed a win desperately, and Jalen Hurts put the team on his back and carried him. So that was a big fucking game right there. Christian Watson and A.J. Dillon had some monster games too. Very, very good matchup here. With Andy's team, he just didn't get a lot of production out of Jeff Wilson. He did not play good at all. Brandon Ayuk didn't have the best game. Olave didn't have the best game. So it's really what hurt him the most. Dylan came up with a dub, 113.9 against 96.5 against Andy. So good dub for Dylan. That keeps his playoff chances alive. If I can check, because I know that he is getting – I don't know his percentage exactly. I don't know how to check that on here. Maybe the standings. Yeah. So Dylan has a 58% chance of making the playoffs. So he has a little bit of a chance. He needs Jace to lose this week and him to win in order for him to take Jace's spot. Or he could have Chance lose and then maybe slip in and go over Chance. So it's going to be interesting. We're going to see what happens with that. But overall, good dub for Dylan because that'll put him back in the chance of making the playoffs. So that's a big win. Next up, we got Bryce versus Jace. Now, Bryce needed this win desperately to not be last, and he got it. Very low-scoring matchup. Jace needed this win too, but unfortunately just didn't get a lot of production out of his flex. He didn't get much out of Mike Evans. Derrick Henry had a really bad game. Really, Josh Jacobs and Herbert put the team on his back, took up over half of his points this week. But, just not good production. I mean, Titans giving up 35 points to Philly, minus 6 points, which is a horrible performance by a defense. And then Bryce's team, I mean, he didn't score a lot of points either, but he got the job done. Really what hurt Chase's team was the minus 6 Titans because Jace would have won if the Titans would have just put up 0. He would have barely won by 0.3 points, but just very unfortunate. Zonovan Knight came out of nowhere with 14 off of the flex spot, which is nice. Isaiah Pacheco had a good game. So very, very, very big win for Bryce. Jace needed that win too, but unfortunately didn't get it. So now Jace still has a good chance of making the playoffs, but he's got to get a win this week because Dylan's coming right around the corner. They both have the same record. So, but Bryce with the dub, 88 to 82.3. That was the second closest matchup of the week in our league for last week. Next up, we have Crew and Connor. Crew's team has just been lighting it up. He did lose last week the week before to Andy. A very hot team that Andy had. But Crew's team came back and performed this week. So, 24 from Mahomes, 20 from Terry McLaurin. That was a big week. But for sure, the Browns' defense is what carried him on his back. 33 points. That's insane for a defense. Probably the highest total I've seen from a defense this year. I think it is the highest. So what a freaking crazy game for Browns defense. They got a couple touchdowns. That's why. Tuck's team, on the other hand, Tuck put up the numbers. He put up a good week. It's just he's taken on an offensive onslaught with the players that Crew has. So, but he got the production that he needed from his running backs. Daniel Jones had a good game. So did A.J. Brown, Kirk. He just didn't have a good flex spot pick with George Pickens for some reason, just only put up 0.7. He did not have a good game. But yeah, that was a good win for Crew. He won 141 to 122. So that puts him at 11-2. He's the best team so far in our division, highest scoring now too. I think he took my spot with the highest points in our league overall for the year. And then that puts Tuck at 6-7. Pretty sure Tuck is still in the playoffs. Let me check. So Tuck's chances in the playoffs, no. So he is 5th spot right now. He would need Andy to lose this week in order for him maybe to slip in. So he's got a 32% chance of making it, while Andy's got an 84% chance. That one's going to come down the wire. We'll see y'all's matchups this week and see how they looked. But that one's going to be pretty close. It really just depends points-wise, too, because both y'all have the same record. So whoever has the highest point total of the year will make it if y'all ended up having the same record at 7-7. But if Andy wins this week, this next upcoming week, he is for sure in. But if he doesn't win and Tuck wins, then it's going to be close. But if Tuck loses, then Tuck's out this week overall, or Andy wins. So Tuck needs a win, and then Andy needs to lose for him to have a chance. Now we'll go, next up is Burt versus Chance. Or never mind, that's week 14. It just popped up. Next game is actually Seth versus Chance. Seth's team is super hot too. The Cincinnati's figured it out. So him having T. Higgins and Joe Burrow. I mean, Joe Burrow put up 35 this week. Big game. Tony Pollard, now that he's kind of filling in that running back one role in a way. He's still sharing carries with Ezekiel Elliott, but Tony Pollard's definitely had more production. 23 points. Amon-Ra, St. Brown, Tyreek Hill with big games. Very great week for his wide receivers. While with Chance's team just didn't do a lot. I mean, it hurt him not having Lamar Jackson getting hurt really quick. Aaron Jones, for some reason, just did not get a lot of production. It was more A.J. Dillon. Stephon Diggs had a good game. So did Lockett. His wide receivers performed well, other than Zay Jones. But everyone else didn't really do much. The Broncos' defense is solid, put up 13. But yeah, what a blowout by Seth. Seth's team is scary, and I got to play him next week, so I'm not feeling too confident in that game, but I really do think that it'll still be a good matchup. Definitely need to get a win too. But yeah, good week for Seth. He is 10-3, 100% chance of making the playoffs. Chance is not exactly 100% yet. We're going to see what happens, but Chance has a pretty good chance of making the playoffs too, so we'll see what happens with that. Next up, we got Team Gray, and we got Connor Calavan. So these are both of the 3-10s in our league, and we needed to see who is going to be last, and now we got two people that are last tied. So big win for Jack. If Jack would have lost this, he would have been down bad. But he needed to get this win, and he got it. This was a very low-scoring one. The lowest scoring one out of all the games this last week. I mean, Connor's team just did nothing. It was very tough to see his players play. I mean, he got no production out of his wide receivers. Eckler didn't have a game to his standards. Alvin Kamara didn't do nothing. Garoppolo got hurt. And it's crazy because the Eagles' defense was his top scorer this week. So while you have Jack's team, he had DK and Tom Brady put up half of his team's points, which is nice. And then everyone else had subpar performances, but Jack got the dub. That was a big win for him, and this next upcoming week is going to be big to see how that consolation playoff bracket looks. So we'll see what happens with that. Both are 3-10. Next up, we got Burt versus Kyle. This is another one that was pretty big for the stakes of Kyle, for sure. Kyle would have gotten the win. he would have had a chance to make the playoffs, but I think his chances are done now. Let me double check and make sure. He has a 1% chance of making it. So I think it's just 1% because he would need either Jace or Dylan to lose, but with it being that low percentage, and he would have to win, I believe that they probably have more points overall put up compared to Kyle's team. So Kyle's team would have to go insane this week in order for him to have any chance of getting in. But unfortunately, it's looking like his playoff hopes are done for. So that's very unfortunate for Kyle. Bert's team put up 128 this week. Bert's looking really well. I think he's for sure in the playoffs too. I'm pretty sure he has a 100% chance of making it now. So Gino with a big game, Devontae Adams with a huge game. Definitely carried his team, put up half the team's points right there. And then you got Kyle's team with Dak and Devontae Smith putting up some pretty good games. Darius Slayton did well. The running backs just didn't do a lot. Dawson Knox had 0, which was crazy. But yep, Bert with the dub. He's 8-5, and Kyle goes to 5-8, 128-94. And now for the last matchup was me and Carson. This one was a nail biter. Big game for both of us too. When it comes to the SGS East Division. Well, he's in the West Division. I would take that back, but big win for me. I needed this win just to solidify my playoff spot. Barely pulled it out, only won by 0.6 points. It really came down to Godwin versus the Buccaneers defense, and Godwin got that catch in the end of the game. That was huge. But Josh Allen, putting up the numbers he needs to put up. He didn't have his projection, but 21, I'll take it. Pretty decent outings from my wide receivers. My running backs didn't do the best, other than Montgomery. But I had Garrett Wilson on the bench with 20, so that kind of hurt me. But still ended up pulling out the dub. Justin Fields had a good game. His running backs did well, so did Justin Jefferson, but everyone else on the bottom didn't do anything. Michael Pittman, Higbee, Juju, just not a lot of production out of them, which hurt him, and that's why I ended up getting the dub, which was nice. I needed that, so pretty good matchup. I'm 7-6 now, and he is 8-5. Pretty big matchups coming up this week for both of us. So, all right, so now we're going to the Week 14 projections. We're going to start with Kyle and Andy. This is a must-win for Kyle. Honestly, could be a must-win for Andy, too, to solidify his playoff spot. So we're going to see what happens with this. It's going to be a really, really, really good game, I'm expecting. That was the wrong button. We need matchup. There we go. But, yeah. Andy's got a chance to win. He's projected 103 against 93. 55% chance of winning. He's got a couple players that are a little banged up. Tua and Joe. We'll see if Joe Mixon comes back this week. He should. Tua is a little banged up too. We'll see if he plays this week. But he can fill in Joe Mixon with Kareem Hunt, Samaje, and he also has Samaje Perine. So I would definitely start Perine if Mixon's not a go. But see what happens with this. I got Andy winning this matchup. I think Andy's going to pull out the dub. But I do like the matchups that Kyle has other than the Arizona playing against New England's defense. So we'll see what happens with that. But going to be a pretty good game. I'm excited to see how that ends up. Kyle, you gotta absolutely go off this week if you want any slim chance of getting in. Now, next up is going to be Dylan and Bryce. So this is another big matchup too. A must-win for Dylan if he wants to have any chance of getting in. So Dylan's got a 55% chance of winning. I'm going to ride with Dylan this week on this, but he definitely needs to get the win. Bryce got a couple players banged up. He's got Deontay Johnson and Traylon Burks, who are both questionable. We'll see if they end up playing. And with Dylan, it hurts his team having Christian Watkins and A.J. Dillon on bye. So we'll see how that affects this projection totals here, but Dylan's projected 95, Bryce is projected 85, and I'll ride with Dylan this week. I think Dylan will get the dub and see if he somehow slips his way into the playoffs. Next up, a must win for Jace against Connor Calavan. Jace has a really big chance of winning this week, 67-33, but we haven't seen Connor put in a running back for this week yet. He doesn't have any on his bench either, so he's going to have to pick one off the waivers. And he could put Kenneth Walker in and then maybe start DJ Moore or Rondale Moore. Those are probably your two best options. We'll see what happens with all that, but I'm going to ride with Jace this week. I think Jace gets the win. Don't really have much Jimmy Garoppolo's out, so he's going to have to find a QB off the waivers for Connor. Josh Jacobs is questionable. Jacoby Myers and Kenneth Walker are questionable. So we're going to see what happens with that. Jace has 110.3 projection total with Connor having a 72.5. So riding with Jace this week on that one. Now we got one of the matchups of the week. We got Crew versus Carson. Both are solidified in the playoffs. They're both, I'm pretty sure, 100% chances of making it. So this matchup doesn't mean anything playoff-wise unless it means something for like who you would play in the playoffs. So it does have a little bit of a reason to play this week for sure. Carson hasn't filled his spots in yet, so there's not really any exact projection on who's going to win this week. But we'll see what happens. Crew's team's got a couple people questionable with DeAndre Swift, Mahomes, Nico Collins, McLaurin's on bye, Cordero Patterson's on bye, Chase Claypool's on bye for Carson, but so is Brian Robinson, Justin Fields, and Pittman. So that's a lot of players that Carson's got to fill in. We're going to see what happens. I am going to ride with Crew this week. Crew's team is just hot. He's 11-2. He should probably get this win as long as all of his players are healthy. So, next up, we got Burt versus Chance. This one's a big matchup, too. Chance has to get the win if he wants his playoff spot. Burt, I think, is already in the playoffs, so he still has somewhat of a reason to play for the sake of playoff picture who he plays against. So, because him and Carson are tied in that league. So we'll see what happens with this matchup. I really do want to lean towards Burt. I think Burt might get the win this week overall. Now I'm not using any really much knowledge here. I just haven't really looked through any of these matchups or anything that much. But Aaron Jones is on bye for Chance, as well as Curtis Samuel. So not really much to lose there. DeAndre Hopkins is back, and I might throw him in there for Julio. I feel like Hopkins has a better chance of performing more than Julio does, but we'll see what Burt does this week. It's going to be a really close matchup, a must-win for Chance. We'll see what happens, but I'm going to ride with Burt this week on that game. Next matchup, we got Connor, Tuck, and Jack. This one's actually a really projected close total here. A must-win for both of them, too, because Connor, if he wants to have a chance to make the playoffs, he's got to win. So Jack, for the sake of not being last in the league, he wants to get a dub this week for sure. But the matchups are really close in this one. I like this a lot. I want to lean towards Connor just because he has the better running backs. But I think that if he puts Cooks in over Pickens, I think that might be the move to make this week. We'll see what happens, but no injuries on both teams, so no one's questionable, doubtful, nothing. So we'll see what happens. I think I'm going to lean a little bit towards Tuck this week, but I would not be surprised if Jack got the dub this week. Such a really close matchup here. And then the last matchup we got is going to be me versus Seth. I do want to say this is probably the matchup of the week when it comes to the teams. We both are projected pretty close. He's got a 52% chance of winning. I have David Montgomery on bye, but I'm not really too worried about it. He has his whole team basically other than Jonathan Taylor. That's a little bit of a loss for him, so he has to put Mostert in. But, yeah, this is going to be a really close matchup. I'm looking forward to seeing how this goes, but I still have to fill in a defensive spot for my team because Colts is on bye, so I'm going to have to find one on the waivers. So, but, yeah, this is going to be a really close matchup. I'm not picking either one of us because it's really hard to even say who's going to win this because we're both looking really close in this. I'm looking forward to this matchup, though. I'd like to get a win to solidify the second spot in my league. So, so that's going to be the Week 14 projections. We'll go ahead and kind of look through the playoff standings real quick just to see how they look. Let's see, where can I find that at? Okay, here's the projected playoff bracket. So, right now, this isn't for sure, but this is just kind of gives us an idea of what matchups we might see in the playoffs, but we still have this week to decide fully what the playoff matchups are going to be because you never know. Dylan or Connor could get in. So, but from what it's looking like right now, it's going to be Crew versus Jace. Number 1 versus number 8 would be the first matchup. And then it would be me and Carson, number 4 versus number 5. Bert versus Andy, number 3 versus number 6. And then Chance versus Seth's, number 7 versus number 2. So that's what the playoffs is looking like right now. But for sure, this isn't a for sure thing yet because there's still a lot of implications that could happen of other teams maybe filling in those spots, some matchup differences. So we'll see what happens with that. But that is currently the playoff bracket, while the consolation ladder is looking like Tuck versus Dylan, and then Bryce versus Kyle, and then Jack versus Connor. So we'll see what happens with all these matchups in the playoffs. These are not for sure, so do not take my word for these being exact because they're not yet. But that is what it's currently looking like playoff picture-wise, standing-wise. So I do kind of want to look at who's put up points-wise, what could happen. Kyle's team's got to go absolutely off for him to have a chance to somehow slip in. Really what he would need is either Jace or Dylan to lose, but he's only put up 1270.5 points total, while Jace and Dylan have put up 1389 and 1369. So his better chance is Dylan losing this week, but that is still 100 points he's got to make up for. So that's a really big difference. Kyle's team's going to have to put up close to 150 to 200 to have a chance. So very unfortunate. But yeah, we'll see what happens with that. That's going to be really interesting if it does end up getting close. We'll go ahead and look at so with Dylan and Jace, let's say both of them win. It's really that, and it's crazy because their points are close, 1369 and 1389. So we'd have to see points wise who would have more to get in. But yeah, what a very close matchups with those. Now let's look at Tuck real quick. So Tuck's put up 1321 points this year. He would need Andy to lose, only Andy, and Andy's put up 1357. So he's definitely got a better chance if he ends up winning this week to get in. We'll see what happens. Andy's still got a pretty solid chance of making it, but Tuck's still got a slim chance. So we'll see what happens with that. That one's going to be really close. But yeah, let's see here. So yeah, that's the pretty much the close implications right there. What could happen? We'll see what happens with all that. Now for the waiver wire, I'll go ahead and let's look at the waiver wires and see what players would be pretty smart to pick up this week for anyone that is needing some players. So right now, let's see. This doesn't really help me, look at players. So we're obviously going to look at running backs and wide receivers first. Let me see. So I guess only one. Okay. So running back wise, not really a lot of great options out there, let's be honest. Not really a lot. I mean, the only ones that seem kind of there's nothing. Running back wise, there's really nothing out there for anyone to go pick up right now. So I would probably stay away from picking up any running backs in case you need to put a flex spot in. I would definitely probably go with a wide receiver. It looks like Hunter Renfro's coming back. So if Hunter Renfro's coming back, there's a chance he could have a decent game. So he's one that I would maybe look at. KJ Osborne's another one. I think he's had a couple touchdowns, or he's had a couple decent outings, I think. He hasn't put up a lot of points this year. But yeah, I mean, he hasn't put up a lot of points this year. He's only had one big game, 15.8 in week 3. So KJ Osborne's not always a bad idea, maybe to just fit in that spot, maybe see what he can do. Kendall Hinton of Denver's another one that's a pretty high projection with 7.9 just because of all the Denver wide receivers that are hurt. But you just can't trust the Broncos offense. Their offense is absolutely horrible. Definitely the worst in the league. I don't know why they wouldn't be. So, but yeah, there's a couple waiver pickups, not a lot wide receiver wise too. So it's very unfortunate. We can look at QBs real quick. Really the only QBs available are Mike White, Russell Wilson, Tannehill, Pickett, Brock Purdy. Out of all of these QBs, I would maybe lean towards Tannehill. Tannehill might have a decent game against Jacksonville, against the 25th worst passing defense. Kenny Pickett's not a bad pick either. He could maybe play pretty well against Baltimore. They're the 22nd worst. You could maybe try Mike White. Mike White hasn't played too bad his first 2 starts of the season. He's put up 31 and 24. I mean, he is playing against Buffalo's defense. That's a really tough defense to play against, but he's honestly put up the numbers. And out of all these QBs, I would probably lean towards Mike White or Tannehill if you need to fill in a QB spot this week. So those 2 are definitely my top picks. Of course, Russell Wilson has the highest projection, but please don't put him in. I mean, the dude's not going to do anything. I mean, he is garbage. So, anyways, so those are some of the waiver pickups maybe that I would lean towards. We'll see what happens. Defense-wise, not really a lot of defenses available in this league either, but you could maybe pick up the you could maybe pick up the Cardinals defense against New England. This might not be a high-scoring game. We'll see what happens. You could also pick up the Steelers defense against Baltimore since Lamar Jackson's out. We'll see how Huntley plays, but Steelers defense isn't a bad option too. So those would probably be my 2 picks, Cardinals or Steelers defenses. Jaguars doesn't look too bad either, but I don't know how they're going to do against the run game with Derrick Henry. So we'll see what happens with that. Those are probably the top defensive pickups this week for sure. But yeah, this has been a very fun year. It is really going down the wire for some of us, so we'll see what happens. But I'll go ahead and end the pod here. Hopefully y'all like this. I did add a little bit more into it, and then next week's pod might be a little longer because we're going to go through the playoffs. We're going to go through the projections of those, implications of the consolation and everything as well. So there will be a lot more in-depth stuff in the next podcast next week whenever we have all these matchups finalized. So deuces. This was a great season, and it's coming to an end. So we'll see how we all do. Good luck to everyone in this last week, and I will see y'all next week. Let's get it.